Okay. So modular programming, modular JavaScript means we can create separate files or module and we can inject them whenever required in any web page or any HTML documents rather than calling or including all file like this, right? So let me explain here once again. Okay. So let's see these two files. So I have created two classes over here. Okay. Just forgot about export. This is one class and there is another class named student. Okay, so there are two classes over here, person and student, right? The person has one method display name and student has also one method display id, and both class are, whenever you create an instance, they are expecting two parameters, means one parameter. Person is expecting a parameter called name, student is id, expecting a parameter called id. So this parameter we have to pass whenever we're going to create the object. Is it clear? Okay, so now to use those things, either we have to declare inside this or declare or define this class inside this particular file in which you are going to use, like this here. So what I'm doing here, for now just forget this. So what I'm doing this here, now I'm creating an instance of person, then I'm accessing the methods inside the person class display name, right? Yes or no? But you can see that I am not defining the class person over here, it is somewhere else already defined, right? So kahan pe hai ye? So you can see I have called these two files over here inside the HTML document, person and student, just above the app.js. What does it mean? Before I'm using this or creating instance out of this class, person and student, which is defined inside these two separate files, person.js and student.js, मैं उसको पहले यहाँ पे include कर रहा हूँ. So यहाँ पे कैसे include किया? I'm just including via HTML document और importing via HTML document. So जैसे HTML document पहले parse होगा, लोड होगा एंड पार्स होने जाएगा, उससे पहले जैसे जावास्क्रिप्ट फाइल लोड होगा वो एग्जीक्यूट भी हो जाएगा बिफोर आई एम क्रिएटिंग ए इंस्टेंस इनसाइड द app.js, राइट? तो कोई भी डेफिनेशन, फंक्शन डेफिनेशन आपने इसके अंदर रख सकते हैं एंड वी कैन कॉल इट इनसाइड our custom js file. For example, these are separate file already defined, you have to just use them. So जब call करोगे और instance create करोगे, it is mandatory that you have to put their declaration and definition just above it. For example, I am just copy this, I just copy this and put it just below it. Okay, and commenting this, I am not using this for now. Okay, now let's see what happened. Error, person before initialization, because class never hoisted, just like function as a statement, right? तो यहाँ पे भी देखो, हम ये class पहले define, we have to define this class prior to creating the instance, right? सेम जब हम एक्सटर्नल फाइल के थ्रू हम कॉल करना चाहेंगे, एक्सेस करना चाहेंगे, तो अपने को फर्स्ट वी हैव टू include this inside the HTML document just above the file in which you are using those classes. Clear? But इसमें problem क्या है? There are so many problems. There are two problems. One problem is the number of files you have to include in a project might be 100 or more than 100 files, modules, right? So what we have to do, we have to every page we have to use this or might be when it is required, or might be in index page we have to include all the file we have created. If it is more than 100, then it is very difficult to call everything over here, and at the time of first initial load all the file will be loaded, downloaded and executes, which is actually not required for us, right? Actually it is not required for us 100%. Yes or no? राइट? ये पेज के अंदर मुझे सपोज ये पर्सन या स्टूडेंट नहीं चाहिए, बट स्टिल आई एम लोडिंग इट, सो इट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. Again, ये number one problem. Another problem is that whenever also sequence. So before I'm using it, the 100 files, I have to maintain the sequence as well. Before I'm calling them, it is mandatory that the files class or module you have created should be just above what? Just above the file your custom you're instantiating those classes, right? So ऐसे बहुत सारे modules होंगे, तो it is very difficult to maintain the sequence. These two problems are there, right? तो फर्स्ट प्रॉब्लम, बहुत सारे फाइल्स है जिसका एक ही एट ए टाइम वी हैव टू डाउनलोड और लोड एंड एग्जीक्यूट, व्हिच इज नॉट नेसेसरी, बट इट इज स्लो योर वेब पेज, राइट? एंड actually these all files are not required for specific pages, right? Unnecessarily we have to call everything whether it is required for that page or not, right? So to avoid these two problems, what we will do, we can use modular JavaScript. So what is it? What is the modular JavaScript? Now modular JavaScript is nothing but you can create separate module in JS file, separate module as in separate JS file, and you can import inside your JavaScript another JavaScript file if it is required to use inside this. You don't have to call everything, all files or all module it is required. Whenever your dependent module is required, then this dependent module you have to call it or import it, right? So let's see. So what I will do, so these modules I don't want to call it initially. When it is required, then I will just call it. Okay. Another thing, that when you are going to use import file like this, right, to make the import work, your JavaScript file that you are calling inside the HTML document, you should mention that this is a type module, type equal to module. Make sure. Clear? It is your working file जहाँ पे आप function call कर रहे हो, या जो predefined class है, you are just creating instance and use it. तो यहाँ पे when you are going to import those files, ये file import कर रहा हूँ मैं, when you are going to import those file over here, make sure that this app.js और कोई भी module जिसके अंदर कोई भी file JS file in which you are using import or export, especially import, and this file if you are calling inside HTML document, then you have to, it is mandatory to mention this file as a module, as a type module. Clear? Okay. Now what I'm doing, before using this person class, before creating this object or instance from person class, I have to first import this file which contain the person class. Yes or no? But to import this, we have to export that class from here. Clear? So I'm exporting this class and I'm importing inside app.js and I'm using this person. Yes or no? Now you can see the person does not have export name and address. Okay. For now, I am just removing those things. Now I can access this method, creating the instance or object out of the person class, and inside the person class there is a method name display name. So I'm accessing that method using object dot notation of the object or instance name, right? So till now, do you have any question? Hello?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. So it is not mandatory that you have to you can only export the class. You can export anything, means like here you can export function, you can export variable, you can export anything. right? Object also you can export. Clear? But ये multiple export inside one file means this is one file which contain multiple export. Okay, then you can import those export inside app.js using the curly braces, and all the imports, all the whatever the class methods or variables, whatever you are going to import, this name should be mentioned inside it. So my function, and what is the other one, address. So these two property and method, this is one method and this is one variable, this is class. So three things I can import over here, then I can also use them over here. As it is a function, I can call this function. As it is a variable, then I can directly console.log the function or the variable over here. So you can see if I run this, then this method is also called display name. This is my function. This function also I have created over there, and this is variable look address is the Ahmedabad. You can see over here. Clear? कुछ भी export कर सकते हैं. But there is another thing called default export, right? Default export. So what does it mean? What is default export means? कोई भी यहाँ से you can see there are three exports, but any one of them can be default export. For example, I am making this as a default. Which one? The class. So what does it mean? The default means whenever you are calling this file, then by default you can access this person class like this. So default class ko, how can I access the default class? It, when you are calling the default class, then it should be outside this curly braces. Remember, it should not be inside the curly braces. Clear? So it is something like this. Then other property and methods, or whatever the exportable things, you can access through this curly braces, which are not default export, right? These are normal export, and default export will be only one export. You cannot set multiple default over here, right? Any one will be the default export. It is working as before, right? So what I'm doing, I am making the class as a default export. So default export mein karunga, then I don't have to use curly braces to export them. So these are called named export, and this is called default export. If somebody import this import anything like this without curly braces, then you should understand that this is export as a default. Clear? And if I am importing something like named export like this, right? Everything is actually named export, but a normal export, and it is default export. Named export means the same name should be mentioned over here. Okay, we can also create alias. I will explain. So यहाँ पे कोई doubt है?
No.
So मैं suppose इसको default करूँगा तो
No,
क्या
sir.
इसको default करूँगा तो ये क्या करेगा? Error आया. क्या बोल रहा है ये? Duplicate export of default. So we cannot make it multiple. If you want to make this my function as default export, then we can remove this. Okay, now it will, the percentage does not provide the export. Now what is the error? Now I cannot put it inside this curly braces. I have to make that out and make this inside this. Now it will work as it was. Is it okay? So this is now default export. So you can export it outside the curly braces, and other than this my function, other entity you can call it inside this curly braces. Okay, so import का statement क्या है? कोई file, ये JavaScript file के अंदर, inside this JavaScript file I need some methods and property from this JavaScript file person.js. Inside app.js I need some method and property to be used inside %js, then I can import this, like import syntax will be import, then whatever the entity or class, whatever it exportable things inside this file, I can export in this way. Then from this is file name. Okay, make sure if you don't write JS, then it will not work. And path yesterday also I explained you path, like if you write dot, then you can see that student and person will be visible, you can import any one of them, right? जैसे आप फॉरवर्ड स्लैश डालोगे तो आपको ये दिखाई देगा. ओके, यहाँ पे क्लियर हो गया? और कोई डाउट है इसमें? यहाँ तक कोई डाउट है?
सर हम डिफॉल्ट यूज क्यों कर रहे हैं सर?
डिफॉल्ट इसलिए यूज होता है जब तुम रिएक्ट या एंगुलर में काम करोगे, कंपोनेंट बेस में काम करोगे. ये एक्चुअली इट इज यूज्ड फॉर सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल. मींस एक फाइल के अंदर एक क्लास होना चाहिए जो डिफॉल्ट एक्सपोर्ट होगा, जो वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू यूज दिस कॉल. और सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल में क्या होता है, एक ही कंपोनेंट के अंदर एक ही क्लास होता है, और जितना कंपोनेंट बनाओगे ऐसे सिंगल आपको सिंगल एक्सपोर्ट करनी पड़ती है. और एक फाइल के अंदर मल्टीपल मेथड मल्टीपल क्लास नहीं डालना चाहिए. दैट इज अकॉर्डिंग टू सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल. आप सॉलिड SOLID सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल देखो ना इन जावास्क्रिप्ट,
यस सर.
इट विल मेंशन ओवर देयर, राइट? तो ये मेंटेन करना चाहिए. सो बाय डिफॉल्ट होगा तो आपको कर्ली ब्रेसेस अननेसेसरी लगाने नहीं.
ठीक.
हेलो.
हाँ सर.
ओके,
ओक्स.
नाउ इज ओके. डायनामिक इंपोर्ट. सो हम पहले क्या देख रहे थे, वंस इनसाइड HTML document, if it is required, then everything we have to import it, whether it is required or not, right? But in case of import inside JavaScript file, what we will do? Inside JavaScript file, if it is required, then what we will do? We'll just import it something like this: import file name and etc etc. But if it is required that I want to import this conditionally, if something happen, then I want to import this file and use this, then how can I do this? But यहाँ पे भी क्या हो रहा है, it is by default call हो ही जाता है, right? Whether it is required or not, but ये मैं import लिखा मतलब, but यहाँ पे कुछ conditionally I want to import this. What does it mean? For example, this happen, then I want to call this file, otherwise it is not required to import it. Unnecessary मैं डाउनलोड नहीं करूंगा. If it is required, कुछ वैल्यू मिलता है तो मैं इसको डाउनलोड करूंगा, तो अदरवाइज नहीं. So that is called dynamic import. So how can I achieve this dynamic import? So there is an import function available in JavaScript which is return a promise. Have you ever used promise? Promise पता है आप लोगों को?
Yes sir.
So promise जनरली क्या करता है, हम promise कंस्ट्रक्टर फंक्शन और क्लास यूज करके न्यू प्रॉमिस करके हम करते थे. बट ये इंपोर्ट मेथड बाय डिफॉल्ट, दिस इंपोर्ट मेथड, इज इट विजिबल टू मी एवरीबॉडी? दिस इंपोर्ट मेथड के अंदर जो भी फाइल अपने रिटर्न करते हैं, which any file you are returning over here, path खल डालना पड़ेगा. You have to put the path inside this import method, then it will return an object, sorry, a promise, right? Then this promise dot then by default it return the whole file as a module. Okay, did you see? Then I can access the module directly, and if it is a class, then module dot student, and I've just created a object over here, then object dot display ID or module dot display student name. So this is what we have created. Let me show you. Okay, let me okay. So जैसे मैं custom function call करूँगा, then it will import, and then inside then I can access the model, whatever we are returning from here. Inside student, you can say display ID is a method, and I am passing the ID whenever initializing this. Okay. तो यहाँ पे क्या किया, import किया वो फाइल को conditionally. If you are writing something like if you want to call over here, like if any condition like any one true by default, कोई condition यहाँ पे रखेंगे inside this, and I want to call it, then it should call, right? कोई condition डाल के मैं इसको call करना चाहता हूँ, then I can do it, because it will not import automatically if file will load. I can import it from conditionally from JavaScript code, right? Let's see first how it works. Module.student is not a constructor. Okay. Why it is showing error? Because I am not writing export over here. Okay. Now you can see the module is nothing but a complete object, inside which you can see the student model. So module.student, I can access it, right? So I'm accessing over here. This module is nothing but a complete module as an object. Then inside that object, I can access the student class. Okay. So जब dynamic import होता है, then कोई भी file हम return करते हैं, then it is something like a complete object, and inside that object, this is what ये क्या है, class, right? So if you want to display this method, there is another method I was calling over here, like student name. If I'm creating a class function, something like export, okay, export this so I've defined one function over here, and I'm printing something inside console.log, and I'm putting something like this will display the name of student. ऐसा कुछ मैंने प्रिंट किया इसके अंदर. Then how I can access this? The module dot student name, because this is one export, this is another export, right? So ये export को हम access करने के लिए module dot student access कर सकते हैं, यहाँ पे module dot student name access कर सकते हैं, but it is a function, it is in class. So inside an object, this is one entity, this is another entity. तो whole object में दो entity है, which is called student is a class and is a my function. So as it is in class, so how can I access this? Now module dot student, and how can I access this? Now module dot student name, and I'm doing the same over here. So module dot student, I'm creating instance. Okay, I'm directly access the function like module dot student name. Is it clear? जितना एक्सपोर्ट होगा ये मॉड्यूल, ये जैसे ऑब्जेक्ट दिखा रहा है, inside this object you can, all the export can be visible like this. If it is a variable like this, let me define export address. Okay, address equal to daily. Clear? So you can say, you can see address is also there. Clear? Visible or not? Clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Dynamic import, how can I use the dynamic import like this? Okay, yeah, I am using this as an promise for now, but you can use it as an async await as well, as mentioned here. ये फंक्शन बनाया, बट जब डायनेमिकली कॉल करना होगा आपको with async await, then you can create another function, and inside await you can import this, right? Then it will also work as it was. Clear? Import कैसे हम import dynamically करते हैं, and how we can import it and protect, means dynamically when it is required. And import always return a promise. Sorry, import always return a yes, promise. Okay, but this file return as an object. This object name, whatever you can put it over the model. In case of model, you can use m, b, c, d, obj. Then obj dot any export will be an element inside this obj. Clear? कोई डाउट है यहाँ पे? No?
Can it?
Guys, please, whenever you are saying something, please unmute, then mute yourself, please. Now modular code execution and global this. So let's see what is modular execution and global this. So inside app.js, let me put it. Okay, so what I'm doing, just forgot about this one. It is not required. Okay, so what I'm doing now, I'm putting console over here. Just below it, I'm importing this. Import से पहले मैं क्या किया, console print कर रहा हूँ, right? And import person, then person instance create किया, then I am calling this display name which is inside this class, and I am printing some storing some value in global object. And inside person.js, let me put this one. Okay, now person.js के अंदर मैंने क्या किया, inside person.js I am printing a console at the top, then the whole class is here, then I am accessing the global.this.get value over here. Okay, either Windows and global this both are working similarly, as I explained earlier. Did you remember? For browser it is window, for server it is global, but for both it is global this, right? Global object is global this. Instead of window we can use global this. Okay, now the sequence of execution. अभी एक चीज बताओ मुझे, यहाँ पे लिखा मैंने console.log के अंदर this is a person and rest of the thing just forget about it. Okay, and console global.this get value. Now inside app.js what I'm doing, at the top I'm console that this is app. Okay, then I'm importing this, right? And all other things will be mentioned over here. Okay, जब मैं app.js कॉल करूंगा, when I am calling this, because initially which will be triggered, this file will be triggered from document from here. जब html एलिमेंट कॉल होगा देन ये फाइल पहले ट्रिगर होगा, ये कॉल होगा, ये डाउनलोड होगा, देन एग्जीक्यूट होगा. क्लियर? जैसे app.js कॉल होगा देन व्हाट हैपन, it will try to print this one. Yes or no? It will print this first, then this will be execute, this import will be execute. After that all these methods and all this code will be executed. Yes or no? हेलो,
Yes, sir.
कोई कुछ बोल नहीं रहा है. बट
Hello.
यहाँ पे
Yes,
हाँ
sir. Yes, sir.
हाँ, यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, पहले दिस इज पर्सन इज कॉलिंग, अब ये फाइल पहले कॉल हुआ, बट यू कैन सी दिस इज नॉट प्रिंटिंग एट द टॉप. कौन सा पहले क्या प्रिंट हुआ ना, इसके अंदर जो कंसोल रखा था, द कंसोल इनसाइड दिस इज प्रिंटिंग फास्ट. देखो पर्सन फास्ट प्रिंट हुआ, राइट? देन 12 नंबर में जो प्रिंट कर रहा था मैंने इनसाइड पर्सन, ये ग्लोबल दिस प्रिंट हुआ बट अनडिफाइंड आया. वो क्यों आया वो बाद में देखेंगे, राइट? तो ये दोनों जो कंसोल प्रिंट कर रहा था मैंने, ये दोनों पहले कॉल हुआ इंसर्ट अपना जानने का. ये जो व्हाट वी कंक्लूड ना, दिस code is not executed initially, but this file is imported first, then other files like, look at it, then app.js में app is executed, then person में से 8 से ये function call हो रहा है, then ये this is also undefined, line number 6, right? ये ग्लोबल दिस के बारे में भूल जाओ, खाली कंसोल के ऊपर फोकस करो. तो पहले कौन सी कंसोल कॉल हुआ ना, दिस, देन दिस, इसके बाद ये app.js के अंदर आया, देन ये प्रिंट हुआ, इसके बाद ये फंक्शन कॉल हुआ, इसके बाद ये प्रिंट हुआ. क्लियर? तो यहाँ पे हुआ क्या, इन द सेम मैनर इट इज वर्किंग. मैं इसको नीचे भी रख दिया बट स्टिल इट इज वर्किंग इन द सेम वे एज इट वाज वर्किंग इनिशियली. तो app.js में आपको क्या पता चला, ये सब एग्जीक्यूशन बाद में हुआ, ये पहले एग्जीक्यूट हुआ, राइट? सो व्हाट डज इट मीन, जैसे पहले अपने होस्टिंग नहीं पढ़े थे, होस्टिंग
Yes, sir.
जो भी
Yes, sir.
फंक्शन या डिक्लेरेशन है वो पहले टॉप में चला जाता है, राइट? तो सिमिलरली द इंपोर्ट और एक रिक्वायर्ड करके आता है, रिक्वायर मेथड. अभी राइट नाउ वी आर नॉट यूजिंग दिस. इन ओल्ड जावास्क्रिप्ट इफ यू वांट टू import any file, then we use require function like this. Sorry, require function आता था, but don't worry about that. This is import. So जब भी import file, कोई भी फाइल के अंदर import statement मिलेगा, if it finds any import statement inside this code or this file, so initially this code will be executed first. So initially what happen, it will be implicitly it is go to the top like this. आपके अंदर जो भी कोड है, it will not consider first. जैसे import वो मिलेगा उसको, it will implicitly go to the top, right? Then it will load this file, this person.js. After completion of this file loading, ये जैसे लोड होगा उसके अंदर जो भी इंस्ट्रक्शन और कोड लिखा हुआ एग्जीक्यूट होगा, उसके बाद जाके ये फाइल कॉल होगी, ये जितने सारे स्टेटमेंट लिखा हुआ है कॉल हो रहा है,
ओके सर।
राइट। सो इंपोर्ट क्या करता है, जहां पे इंपोर्ट लिखा होगा ना वो पहले बाकी सब कोड को एग्जीक्यूशन बंद कर देगा, सो इट विल स्टॉप एग्जीक्यूटिंग रेस्ट ऑफ द कोड अनलेस अदरवाइज दिस फाइल विल बी लोडेड कंप्लीटली, राइट। तो जहां पे इंपोर्ट मिलेगा उसको, वो जब तक वो फाइल लोड नहीं हो जाता है या इसके अंदर का कोड एग्जीक्यूट नहीं हो जाता कंप्लीटली, अनलेस अदरवाइज ऑल ईच एंड एवरी लाइन ऑफ कोड हैज बीन एग्जीक्यूटेड इनसाइड द person.js, it will not start executing other code inside this file. Yeah, this is one thing. Another thing is import. If you have written import inside anywhere inside the file, it is automatically implicitly hoisted to top. Means it is not called hoisted, but ultimately this import is go to the top. Then execute first. After execution of this, all other file will be, all other statement is going to start execution, going to execute. Is it clear?
यस सर। सर
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
हेलो, हाँ सर, ऐसा ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि सर इंपोर्ट से पहले अगर दूसरी भी कुछ एग्जीक्यूशन करवाना हो, जैसे app.js में, तो वो भी सर ऐसा पॉसिबल है?
नहीं, इंपोर्ट लिखा मतलब इंपोर्ट विल एग्जीक्यूट फर्स्ट, एंड इंपोर्ट जब तक कंप्लीट नहीं होगा, जब तक ये इसका एग्जीक्यूशन कंप्लीट नहीं होगा, वो कुछ भी
ओके सर।
एग्जीक्यूशन करने नहीं देगा तुमको।
ओके सर।
सो ये ग्लोबल दिस का मतलब क्या है, ग्लोबल दिस वी कैन यूज इंस्टेड ऑफ विंडो, राइट। सो विंडो ब्राउजर में चलता है, और एक ग्लोबल करके एक वेरिएबल है जो कहाँ पे चलता है, सर्वर में चलता है, नोड जेएस में, एज एन ग्लोबल ऑब्जेक्ट, राइट। but global this is used for everybody. Okay, now question is, why these two things are undefined? Why? कोई बता सकता है? बिकॉज ये फाइल में पहले एग्जीक्यूट हो रहा है, सो इनसाइड पर्सन यू कैन सी आई एम जस्ट कंसोल log this. So actually हम देखने जाएंगे तो this console is executed first, this console is executed first, then it executes second, then inside app you can see this execute in the third, this execute in the fourth, in the sorry, uh, then this is the sequence of execution, right. तो ये जब असाइन कर रहा हूं मैं विंडो में, एंड ऑफ कोर्स विंडो मीन इट इज ग्लोबल दिस, बट ये सबसे लास्ट में असाइन हो रहा है। आपको ऐसा लगता हो कि app.js पहले कॉल हुआ, देन दिस स्टेटमेंट विल बी एग्जीक्यूटेड फर्स्ट, देन this statement, this all the code will be executed? No, if you are importing something, then ये जो person.js के अंदर जितना भी रखा हुआ है वो पहले एग्जीक्यूट हो जाता है, तो उसके अंदर पहले एग्जीक्यूट हो रहा है, देन यहाँ पे कोई भी इनिशियलाइजेशन नहीं है। देखो गेट वैल्यू में, गेट वैल्यू करके एक वेरिएबल है जिसके अंदर कोई वैल्यू असाइन किया मैंने, बट वो नहीं है, वो असाइन नहीं हुआ है, बट मैं कॉल कर रहा हूँ, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज शोइंग अनडिफाइंड, राइट। तो इसको सपोज मैं यहाँ से हटा लिया कंट्रोल एक्स करके, एंड पर्सन के अंदर यहाँ पर डाल दिया, देन इट विल नाउ वर्किंग फाइन। सो ये गेट वैल्यू में वैल्यू असाइन हो गया सी के, एंड कैन सी बोथ आर प्रिंटिंग नाउ सी के। सो क्या हुआ यहाँ पे ना, पहले जब app.js कॉल होगा तो पहले ये फाइल कॉल हो रहा है person.js, तो person.js के अंदर मैंने क्या किया, यहाँ पर इनिशियलाइजेशन कर दिया, एंड आई एम एक्सेसिंग दिस। ओके, नाउ मैंने क्या किया, window dot get value, I am just assigning the value to get variable which is in on global object, in browser global object is window, but I can access this through global this, though I am accessing those this get value through global this global object till I am getting this value. So what we conclude from here, the global this is a global variable which is available always in server as well as in browser, but if you want to access this through window, then it is the window is not accessible inside the server, right. And global, in server there is a variable called global, only global, not this. And this is a global variable inside server in node.js, right? तो node.js के अंदर में global यूज कर सकते हैं, ब्राउजर के अंदर विंडो यूज कर सकते हैं, बट global this means it is a capital T, this it is accessible in global in browser as in global object and in server both sides, so you don't have to worry. So आपकी कोड में सपोज ये global this लिखोगे then it will not create any error inside server or browser, whether you are running this code inside server or browser, it doesn't matter for you. So always try to use global this as in global object. Clear?
yes.
ओके, सो ये फाइल पहले एग्जीक्यूट होता है, तो ये मैं पहले यहाँ पे ग्लोबल गेट वैल्यू में वैल्यू असाइन कर दिया, सीखे ना, वो यहाँ पे प्रिंट कर रहा हूँ, तो ये पहले एग्जीक्यूट हुआ, इसके बाद जाके ये मैं यहाँ पर प्रिंट कर रहा हूँ, यहाँ पे भी उसका एक्सेस हो रहा है, क्योंकि ग्लोबल ऑब्जेक्ट में मैंने पहले असाइन कर दिया, फिर मैं एक्सेस कर रहा हूँ। क्लियर? तो इंपोर्ट कैसे काम करता है, ग्लोबल दिस क्या करता है मैं बता दिया, बट कौन सा फाइल पहले एग्जीक्यूट हो वो मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट है। तब ये इसको यहाँ पे रख दूंगा, यहाँ पे रख दिया, तो ये क्या प्रिंट करेगा, सेम प्रिंट करेगा जो पहले प्रिंट हो रहा था, राइट? ये पहले एग्जीक्यूट होगा, देन इसके अंदर जो भी चीजें है इनिशियलाइजेशन सब कुछ होगा, इसके बाद जाके ये सब कोड कॉल होगा, राइट? ये बाद में कॉल होगा, बट ये पहले कॉल हो जाता है, ये पहले लोड करेगा, एग्जीक्यूट करेगा, ये फाइल के अंदर जो भी कोड लिखा है एग्जीक्यूट करेगा, उसके बाद जाके इसके अंदर जो भी कोड लिखा है वो एग्जीक्यूट करेगा। क्लियर? इसमें कोई डाउट है? हेलो?
No sir, clear.
So that's it from modular JavaScript, dynamic import. Then there are some other things are there. I just want to explain you, just a minute. Okay. Okay. So let's see, I'm just mentioning over here something like this inside person. Okay. And I'm importing that person and student in the same way. Let's remove this one. Okay. So now inside person, you can see there is a default export called person. So I have to put this person like this, then comma, okay, then again comma, inside this you can call my function and other things. Yes or no? Okay. Now it will work properly as you expected. So this function is called and it's print the name, whatever name I have passed from here, I have passed here. Okay, so it is working fine. Now I am what I am doing over here, I am putting the exact name as it was, right? But I can use something like alias as fn, right? So I can call this as fn inside this. Did you see? My function is calling. Now what I am doing over here, so I can create an alias. So whenever you are calling any variable or function, whatever it might be, so you can create an alias, something like my function as what? fn. So इसको rename कर दिया, right? So exact name use नहीं करना तो हम कर सकते हैं, या person as p, यहाँ पे नहीं करने देगा ये, डिफॉल्ट इंपोर्ट को नहीं करने देता है। डिफॉल्ट इंपोर्ट को हम रीनेम कर सकते हैं, बट एनी नेम्ड एक्सपोर्ट को हम रीनेम कर सकते हैं। यहाँ पे एड्रेस को एड्रेस एज a, right? Then I can print this as a. Ahmedabad is printing over here, right? So named export को export जो भी named export है, we can use it. We can create an alias something like this, as using as keyword, and whatever the variable name we can put it over here, right? Now if I want to access address, then it will not work. What does it mean? It is not defined. Why? Because this variable I have renamed it to a. Clear? Okay. So
Yes, sir.
named को हम क्या, name export को हम क्या कर सकते हैं? As an एलियस हम डिफाइन कर सकते हैं, कोई वेरिएबल उसका नाम चेंज कर सकते हैं, इसको बोलते हैं एलियस, एलियस ऑफ ओरिजिनल फंक्शन। नेम्ड फंक्शन, नेम्ड एंटिटी को हम एलियस उसका बनाते हैं। ओके, नाउ इफ यू वांट टू एक्सपोर्ट एवरीथिंग, देन यू कैन यूज स्टार। सो व्हाट? स्टार एज obj for example, or module as module. Okay, then you have to use everything like m dot person, then यहाँ पे m dot fn, sorry my function, right? m dot my, sorry my fn, अरे यार, ओके, देन यहाँ पे m dot address। क्लियर? क्लियर?
Yes.
Person is not a constructor. Okay. Okay, it will not work. Why it is not displaying working? Let's see. Because it is default. So default, the default export will not, we cannot create an alias, or we cannot create called as a star. Star means जितने सारे export है, all export will be, we can export all we can export all the entity, those who are exported from another file, and you can store it over here in any object. Then object dot method name, object dot I can serve, but as a default you cannot either rename it, or it is also an alias, right? You cannot rename it. So make sure whenever you are creating a default export, you have to write something like the same name you are using over there. Okay, so rename किसको कर सकते हैं? जो normal export है, named export है, उसको ही कर सकते हैं, बट डिफॉल्ट एक्सपोर्ट को हम रीनेम नहीं कर सकते, और एज ए स्टार हम कर ही नहीं सकते। इज इट क्लियर?
Yes.
सो ये नहीं बताया था मैंने एलियस, तो ये बता दिया, इट इज कंप्लीटेड। यस
सर डिफॉल्ट और स्टार सर एक साथ कर सकते हैं?
स्टार में क्या होता है? स्टार में डिफॉल्ट इसलिए करते हैं क्योंकि उसमें मल्टीपल एक्सपोर्ट होना ही नहीं चाहिए। जो सॉलिड प्रिंसिपल के हिसाब से हम डिफॉल्ट क्यों डालते हैं? क्योंकि हम कर्ली ब्रेसेस यूज नहीं करेंगे ना, उसको रीनेम करेंगे। और डिफॉल्ट इसीलिए डालते हैं क्योंकि उसके अंदर मल्टीपल कुछ होगा ही नहीं, मल्टीपल एक्सपोर्ट होगा ही नहीं, राइट? That is the main motto of using default, right? But if you want to please mute your mic. But if you are exporting multiple entities, whether it is variable or it is in function, object, or might be class, right? If you are using that, if you are exporting multiple things, then you can, instead of calling them like inside curly braces, what we are doing inside curly braces, we are putting their names. But if you don't want to do this if you don't want to do this, like comma 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 multiple what you can say entities are there, then you have to access them named function, named methods, or named entity. You can access through comma separated value over here, named export code, right? So if you want to do this, if you don't want to do this, you can just use star and export them directly as an object, right? But if you are using default, then you cannot rename it, or you cannot use as a star का मतलब सब कुछ लेके
Okay.
आएगा, राइट? बट डिफॉल्ट जो है वो उसको कोई रीनेम नहीं कर सकता, वो एक ही बार कॉल होगा, जैसे ये इंपोर्ट दिस एंड फ्रॉम दिस फाइल, दैट्स इट। क्लियर?
ठीक है।
Okay, so module is completed. Then tomorrow we will go with HTTP request, AJAX, then browser storage. This is a very simple chapter. This is something you have to know, which is required. Then browser storage, and if you get time, then I will let you know how, I will explain you the npm install, npm registry package. Okay.
Okay.